Saw X or Saw 10 is now the 10th film of the Saw franchise that's now lasted 19 years. This one, though, is a prequel which takes place in between Saws 1 and 2. The film is directed by Kevin Gruder, hope I'm saying his name right. Gruder was the editor for the first 5 Saw films and Jigsaw, but also was the director of Saw 6 and Saw 7 3D, the final chapter. This one, as I said, is a prequel, so bringing back John Kramer, played by Tobin Bell. Kramer in the movie, after a couple of weeks after the ending of Saw 1, is again, he has cancer, he's struggling, and is desperate to continue to live. So he gets basically a chance in Mexico for this off-site clinic where they can help him get rid of this cancer, but he realizes that it is a scam. So Kramer's in Mexico City. So Kramer sets up all these traps for all the doctors who scam people like Kramer. Along the journey with John is Amanda, back from the films, played once again by Shawnee Smith, who we know is the first apprentice following the ending of Saw 2, who's now helping out John take out these acts. The film is 1 hour and 58 minutes and is rated R. Welcome back to a brand new review here on Max Talk Movies. We're talking about Saw X. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, ring the bell. I do these types of movie reviews, movie rankings, including my ranking of the Saw films coming out tomorrow. More TV show reviews, and every Monday my box office breakdown. So please subscribe, ring the bell if you're new to the channel. Comment down below if you've seen Saw X. Tell me, did you like Saw X? This is one of your favorites of the franchise. Don't give me your rankings, though, as I am doing a separate video ranking all 10 Saw films tomorrow. So save your thoughts for that for tomorrow. But did you like Saw X? Do you want to see more Saw films? Or if you've also seen this, tell me, are you just done with the Saw franchise and this should be where it finally ends? Let me know in the comment section. Please like the video, the thumbs up button. That is how you support this channel. So as I've already said, I'm already going to do a Saw movie ranking of all 10 films. The last week and a half, I've watched all 9 Saw films leading into this one, so I'll have a good ranking video as well. And I am planning on doing a spoiler review for Saw X on Monday, where I break down the spoilers, the mid-credit scene, and other things. So please also stay tuned for that. So as I just said, heading into this rewatch of the Saw films, I've only seen, heading in, Saw 1, I think 2 times, and Spiral once. So, and I reviewed Spiral here on the channel. So I have not seen any of the Saw really sequel films before me watching it for the first time in the last week. I watched, yes, 9 films in a week to make sure I was ready for Saw. And while, yes, I'm not in love totally with all these films in this franchise, I am, I guess, a Saw fanatic. I love the overarching soap opera that the franchise became for 1 through 7. And I was really happy, excited about the trailers, putting in between Saw 1 and 2, but making John Kramer the main character. So let's get into my thoughts. Also, actually, before I get into my review, I do want to say first, it is recommended that I think for people who have not seen any Saw film, it is recommended, not required, to watch the first 2 Saw films. I do think that the movie adds a lot more if you know the context. Now, obviously, if you're someone like me who's now seen all of the films and now I'm now addicted to all the Saw stuff, there's a lot of Easter eggs and callbacks and setups of things that we know are going to happen in this movie that I think a lot of Saw fans, there was a packed theater I was in, and there were some callbacks that me and someone else in the theater knew about. So it kind of was exciting if you're a Saw fan. But if you've never seen it, you can still watch this movie without seeing any of the Saw films and follow along what's going on. But it does help at least seeing the first 2 films in the franchise. As I said, there is a mid-credit scene, which I do think is important to the overall story. It's not just hey, we're setting something up for the future. It's kind of a mixture of that and a actual tie-in to the overall movie. So let's get into my review for Saw X. And as I've said, this franchise is really hit or miss, and mostly misses for me in this franchise. You know, I'm addicted to all the Saw lore and stuff like that. It's a lot of misses, and they've already tried to reboot the franchise after Saw 3D. This is its 3rd chance really to draw back interest to the franchise. You had Jigsaw in 2017, which was kind of a soft reboot, but was still tied into the main chronology of the franchise. Then you had Spiral, which was a total spin-off, and we've had no follow-ups to either Jigsaw or Spiral. And now they're going back to where we started. So overall, I really enjoyed this movie. For me, this is an excellent Saw film. And as a Saw fan now, I really enjoyed this movie from start to finish. And the biggest reason why is finally, it took them 20 years to realize this, the most interesting character of this entire franchise, John Kramer, is finally the main character. He is in every shot of the movie, from the first scene to the last scene. And Tobin Bell people don't realize this is one of the most iconic performances in the horror genre, in movies in general. While he's definitely been a side character, he was really used in the first 3 films, really 2 and 3, as a very much a side character, then used in flashbacks in 4 through 8. He is the main focus of the movie. And I think the biggest reason why this movie works is that, yes, Tobin Bell is great, and having John Kramer at this focus is that you're kind of on Jigsaw's side throughout the entire movie, because it's the first time in the franchise where someone's in these traps and you're kind of rooting for them to not escape. The biggest problem with the franchise as it went on was at the beginning with Jigsaw's traps, there was an option of you can survive these traps. That's obviously how Amanda becomes the apprentice, that Amanda survives the traps of the first movie, and Jigsaw respects that. She gets rehabilitated. She joins up with him. And I think the other films, it was just senseless, no-win situation traps that really suck a lot of the energy and the intensity out of traps when you know the person is just going to die. And this movie does a flip in a really good way, which is that the people that are in these traps are really bad people. They are the real villains of the movie. Jigsaw's more of kind of like a crooked, anti-hero. And you have these scammers who basically ask these people who are dying, are basically knowing they're going to die on their deathbeds, that we have this treatment, and they don't do it. And they get paid so much money for them to travel and do these things. And they're ultimate scammers. And they're the worst of the people in this entire franchise to be in the Jigsaw traps. And that made the movie really a different vibe to it. Now, yes, Kevin Gruder is back both as the director and a writer and an editor. So he finally puts this franchise back to where it was in that early 2000 feel, with the shaky cam, the green lighting. It feels like it perfectly fits in between Saw 1 and 2 as it pertains to atmosphere, story too, but also just the editing and the vibe of the film. And another great thing, that it finally moved away from the Saw cliche that's basically been the last, I guess, 5 movies of the franchise since Saw 4, where half the movie is that people are in a Jigsaw game and they're trying to escape the game throughout the entire film. And the other half of the movie is the soap opera, police detective story. There's no police detective. This is the most contained and personal story of the entire franchise, because there's no jumping around to different timelines. They're not explaining things that no Saw fan once explained. They're just focusing on one story, and it feels like it's the only real self-contained story of the entire franchise. A big help to the movie also is Amanda coming back into the fray, played by Shawnee Smith. Now, it is distracting that, again, Tobin Bell does not need to de-age, because, again, he played a very old character 20 years ago who was dying from cancer. So his look means the same. Shawnee Smith was around 30. Again, this is a 20-year difference, so you can definitely, it's not a knock on her. Obviously, time passes. She aged up since the previous decades plus of films, and they kind of used this wig to kind of give her the same look from Saw 2, and it definitely wasn't good. But seeing Amanda and John worked in tandem, it was something that's really good, and it really elevates Saw 2 and 3 when you realize their dynamic. They argue sometimes throughout the film. Amanda has some really nice dialogue that got a lot of chuckles on purpose in the crowd that I thought was really good. And just seeing the similarities and differences between John Kramer and Amanda were really important. And I think Amanda is one of the MVPs of this movie. Her dynamic with Jigsaw was a lot of fun. The scammers themselves were also fun. You had the main one, Cecilia, hopefully I'm saying her name right, played by Savani Makodi Lund. She's like the kind of the main scammer who's doing all this to all these people. Everyone kind of does like a whatever job. There's nothing special about the other performances in the film. Obviously, the traps are important. The traps are really gruesome and brutal as always, but it's kind of back to kind of the simple, not convoluted traps that has eluded this franchise for the last decade plus. and I really like the traps in the movie. And this is also a different feeling Saw film. The Saw traps and the actual feeling of Saw movie doesn't really take place until around the 40-minute mark of the movie. It's kind of a sobering doctor cancer patient's movie for like 40 minutes. It doesn't even feel like a Saw film. And then once it does, it really does kick into high gear. Also, it has to be a Saw film. There has to be a twist. I kind of respected that this movie doesn't go for this, oh my God, twist like the earlier films tried to do. This twist fit the story and it keeps the momentum of the movie going. Now, obviously, all Saw films are pretty flawed, and this one is not different. Of course, there's a lot of just convoluted ways of as all Saw films have. John is, I guess, the most brilliant mastermind of all time, that certain people have to make certain decisions for the movie to kind of keep going. And as in every Saw film, it is a bit ridiculous where there's like a couple just logic leaps to keep the movie moving forward. And overall, I didn't really love the performances of some of the people who played the scammers in the movie. Some of the performances just kind of pulled me out of a couple of emotional scenes with them. But overall, I really did enjoy Saw X. Again, now I am coming from now a big Saw fan, but I think this executes a fresh vibe now to the Saw franchise, a franchise that I have not been excited to watch in years, but now I'm kind of actually wanting to see this franchise continue, going back to the basic, which is Tobin Bell as John Kramer and Johnny Sins as Amanda Young are gold mines for this franchise. So overall, I'm going to give Saw X a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm going to go 83% for Saw X. What are your thoughts on Saw X? Let me know in the comment section down below. Stay tuned for tomorrow, my ranking of the franchise, all 10 movies. We're going to get into it tomorrow here on the channel, so stay tuned for that as well.